I want to take us back or forward. We said we'd talk about power and gender some more, because that's been a big theme in your practice and in your writings as well. And there was a moment earlier when we were talking about the idea of change and how the struggle when to try not to know the way that you think your clients should change. And I wanted to introduce it then because I think there's an edge there which is about abuse. So what do you do when you're sitting with a client and you're seeing some kind of abusive behaviours or experience of being abused by others, and then you're saying, okay, but I shouldn't know how this person should change, I can't make them change anyway, but...
Again, I think Peter Lang and Vernon Cronin have written a very, very useful paper about this, about what's it called? Domains of aesthetics and production.
Yes.
I think that there are situations, and it's particularly situations of power abuse, either by the persons in front of one or sitting rooted into the larger context, where we are invited very powerfully because of our ethics into a domain of production and out of the domain of aesthetics, which for me means domain of aesthetics I'm free to be tracking pattern and meaning and multiplicity and points of view and equal validity. That's me and the clients in the domain of aesthetics. I go into the domain of production, and they wrote that paper because so many of us in the family therapy field were struggling with what people mainly like to call hats. When I put my social worker hat on and
Yes.
Pick up the phone, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I think that being invited into that domain of production is something that co-evolves between clients and therapists. So I also think that when they tell me something in the session, even if it's a small hint and I have to pick up on it, Virginia Goldner used to say that when she was now in a position where the smallest talk of violence, even if it was very, by the way, would bring her out in a rash, and she wouldn't feel better till she tracked what they were talking about.
Yes.
But the fact that clients give me that invitation means that there's a kind of question being offered into the domain of therapy. Is this relevant for therapy? Do you care? Does it matter? And often therapists are behaving in ways that say, no, it doesn't matter actually, you can keep on abusing your children, abusing your partner, abusing your elders, doing what, I don't care about that, I'm going to be talking to you about something else. So I think I have to at that point then acknowledge that I'm now moving into that domain. And so again, thinking about what von Foerster said about working ethically means increasing the possibilities of choice. I think when I move into the domain of production, I say, and now I'm going to use my power as a therapist to try and shut down some of those choices. Yeah? So it's a dicey and complicated and difficult moment, and what I try to do when I'm in a situation like that is to hold the responsibility here. This is my position as a therapist, as a person who works in this agency and is responsible for it, and in terms of usually the law of the land, because it's normally when one gets find yourself in that position, it's where people are describing behaviour which if they did it in the street to a stranger, they'd get arrested for it.
Yes.
The fact that they do it to someone who loves them and forgives them is, I will say this kind of thing, is neither here nor there, you know. That we have to attend to it, and for me to be able to work with them, I need to find out whether they can make me feel safe, that I'm not colluding in a continuation of abuse. And then we unpack, and so on. So what I try to signal in a situation like that, and again I've tried to write about it, but it's so multi-layered, it's difficult, is that I'm interested in all of the layers. I'm very interested in what their personal histories are, as individual people and as the gendered people that they may be, that they are, either if they're in a heterosexual couple or a same-sex couple or parents of children of certain genders. Yeah? I'm interested in all of that. How come they have got to a position where under certain circumstances power abuse will be practiced by one person in relation to another? How come the other one puts up with it? So I'm very interested in all that history. I'm very interested in the systemic loops about how they trigger each other and how they maintain the system. And we can't do anything about talking about that until I know that talking like that isn't going to make them so upset that when they go outside they have no systems of control set up, and one of them will hurt the other again.
Yes. Yeah.
So I invite all of us into the domain of production, which is how can we be safe.
Yes.
And then if we're clear about that, then we move back into that domain of aesthetics, where the therapy happens and where it then is possible for me to feel empathically curious and interested in everyone in the system. But it's not, it's a sort of dancing around on lots of different levels simultaneously thing.
Yes, and there are so many things that we could talk about in relation to that, and we have talked about and we will talk about. But I wanted to move off a little bit from that into thinking about things of gender, because that's another area that I know you've been very interested in, and connects with ideas about power and oppression and a reduction of choice. So I don't know what in
that very large domain do you want? I'm sitting at
where to start?